This is Tech Talk Detroit with Brian Spurgeon and Chuck Lobert. Tech Talk Detroit brings you the latest in tech news and Detroit happenings every week.
Welcome back to Tech Talk Detroit. I'm Chuck. We're here with Brian, and we got a special guest on with us today as well. We've got George from Datto, who is our primary backup and disaster recovery company. So, George, welcome.
Hey, thank you, guys. Nice to be here.
Appreciate having you today.
Yeah, with everything going on, one of the things that a lot of companies are thinking about is, their backup and disaster recovery. What about the data that's out in the cloud? What about the data that's at the office? Even if they're not there, they still have to be worried about that data that's sitting there that they might be connecting to across the VPN or whatever it is. So we thought it makes sense to have you on to just kind of talk. One, we wanted to hear from you, just see how another company is handling all of this and how you guys are working right now, and any insights that you've learned since you've had to be working from home. Brian and I kind of shared some of our insights. I think we're on week 7 now of working from home, and just some of the stuff that we've learned, from a, even just the standpoint of, making sure you got like your typical setup at the office. I went and got my office chair. We've got, multiple monitors now, like just different things like that where we're able to still be productive. So, we'd love to hear any insights that you've learned from your time working at home. I know that you've got a little one as well. So I know that adds, both some challenges as well as, making it nice also to just be home and be with her as well. So, just anything that you guys have learned and how Datto is coping with things and continuing to operate.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll preface this with, I apologize for any background noise. There's always something going on here, and so my daughter might come by at any time. So that being said,
not a problem.
There've been a lot of adjustments, right? I think one of the things you had mentioned was really being able to set up a workspace that you feel comfortable in. And so, for me, I just happened to pick my dining room because that was the most sprawling space where I can set up my monitors, all of the tools that I'm using each day, and just kind of gives me the best separation from some of the other chaos at home. I think one of the big challenges, and I mentioned this to Sarah briefly, was that for the family, for those of us that have either little ones or significant others, it's often difficult to easily see the difference between home and the workspace unless you have a defined workspace in a home office. And so I think trying to set up some parameters around what that looks like. Each morning my wife and I actually go over what I have on my calendar so that if there are specific events that are already scheduled, she's aware. If there's something I'm recording, we'll try to minimize the noise. If I'm on some important calls, we'll try to set up things that the family can do outside if the weather is permitting. We've been trying to get as much sunlight as possible. We feel like a bunch of curmudgeons just stuck at home. But no, I think first and foremost, making sure that you're in a comfortable workspace is huge. Because the biggest takeaway is that while there is certainly tremendous impacts that this has had on all different businesses, both small and large, the reality is that business continues, right? There's still work to be done. We all have our specific assignments and roles, and what will eventually lead to, I'm sure, another question you might have is what sort of tools we have to leverage to be able to best accomplish that. And so the good thing for us, at least as far as Datto is concerned, is that most of our systems were already 100% cloud-based, all accessible remotely, all accessible over VPN. And most of our systems that we use, including the laptop that I'm using right now, was issued through the company, has automatic updates installed. And so I'm getting all of those patches pushed to my machine almost daily. So from a security standpoint, it's incredibly important to make sure that the system that you're working on is either remotely managed or has all of the systems in place to keep your workstation secure. So that transition was really as simple as me unplugging my laptop at work, which I already used in the office, connected to multiple screens, and connect to my TV here at home. So some of the peripherals I was able to snag from work. Our ops team has been working around the clock to make sure everyone has exactly what they need. even some of my coworkers have noted, their machine finally kicked the bucket. It might have been an issue from 4 or 5 years ago. And our ops team has been in place to provide replacement work products within 24 hours, sometimes same day. So we have a whole continuity and plan for our organization. It began rolling out about 8 weeks ago. The planning for this actually began in January. So we were very, very ahead of any of the actual US impact here. And even though we didn't actually deploy full-on work from home until the beginning of March, the plans throughout the first quarter of the year really set us up to be able to do so very swiftly.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And we were kind of in a similar scenario at Vision where everything that we used was cloud-based. So from that standpoint, it was easy to just transition to a work from home scenario. But what I think a lot of businesses have learned since this started is that that's going to be the need moving forward, right? You got to be ready for this type of thing. Hopefully nothing like this ever comes up again, but there's always going to be something, whether it's, surprise sicknesses or, things that come up, bad snow days, whatever it is, that if you can be set up to quickly and easily be able to work remote, you're just so much better off.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is also going to force many of, the United States and really global organizations to reconsider their position on work from home in general, because despite almost all of the IT related companies that we work with, we're all very, very forward thinking. We're invested in some of the best and brightest technology that is forward thinking as well. Typically, most folks find either a tremendous benefit with working together physically in the same office space, or just have a very sort of like staunch, protest to wanting to allow folks to work from home in some cases. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting dynamic now that we're forced to do this, because I think inevitably it will prove that there is true value in being able to do so. There is a really nice work-life balance. For me personally, I'm saving 2 hours in commuting time every day. I think that's the same as getting a raise. You know what I mean? So I think there are simple things like that that will be evaluated going forward. But also, I think companies are going to start to think of if this were to happen again, or if they're going to support their workforce in continuing to work from home for a prolonged period of time. What sort of tools do I have in place to do so? Am I prepared to do so in a secure way that's going to make sure that my business is protected? So typically, obviously with Datto, that's the core focus of most of what we do. Mm-hmm. And so I think, somewhat self-serving, but also just in the interest of sharing my opinion, we typically look at everything from that same viewpoint or vantage point. How can I best protect my business? And now it's just a matter of, there are additional variables that are impacting business. It's not just external cybersecurity threats. Now it's that in addition to financial impact, planning, budgeting, and other aspects of businesses trying to really both overcome the hurdles that are right in front of us right now, and also survive the recovery period, however long it may be. And as we know from past economic challenges, different areas of the United States and different areas of the world are impacted in very different ways and for different lengths of recovery time. So those are some of the things I think will more than likely come to the fore as businesses are really starting to look at where their investments are.
And with us having you on here, George, one of the points that Brian brought out is even in the instance of a power outage or something like that. And so that brings up the question: what if you're not fully cloud-based? What if you've got stuff sitting on premise in your office and your office is out of power too? And I think that's something that you can talk to as to where Datto's offerings really play in well to that. So maybe you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple parts of that. It's unlikely that you're still working off of a file server right now, physical server that would have been would have been hosting some of your other local services. There's a couple parts of that, right? As far as what you're more than likely utilizing as tools right now. Most businesses that hadn't already migrated to Office 365, for example, have probably now evaluated and or also completed the process to migrate to a cloud-based solution.
Yep.
Right? Part of that is collaborative work in the ability that you have to share and modify documents. Most folks, if you didn't already have a chat feature that was enabled across your business, now you're using Teams. The reality, I think, in relation to what you asked is it's unlikely that any home user has redundant power supplies also. So for anything that may have been locally hosted, power outage, you're wiped out, right? You have no access to your primary means of business, and no access to your primary means of business means downtime. So for us at Datto, most of what we calculate as the largest expense to local businesses is the amount of downtime that they would experience in relation to the loss of connectivity to their business data. So when we think about how we play with some of the current solutions that are being used most heavily, for example, Office 365, we want to make sure that it's not only a supported system on the MSP side of the house, but also that you have a secure secondary copy of the data as well. So I think realistically, you transition away from, in some cases, a server-based approach. You no longer have some of the fail-safes of a local office. And in addition to that, almost every single home that is now being used as a workplace has a network that was more than likely not configured to support the best and latest security practices. So I think one of the things that I had to look at this even for my own modem and router was, did I ever reset the factory password? Is it still is the password still password? So I think there's instances like that where obviously from like a leadership direction, you probably want the leaders in your organization to put out a set of standards, but in the vast majority of cases, vision, you guys are the ones that are looking at those things and not your customers, right? Trying to update and offer security enhancements where possible. So I think the reality of the situation is moving from on-premise based solutions to cloud solutions was sort of the biggest migration point early on in this entire event. But even well beyond that, there's still more security vulnerabilities within your local network than ever before, right? And through many more endpoints than ever before, because everyone's in their own home.
Yep.
Right? So I think with all of those things in mind, there have been major organizations. I mean, the FBI has put out PSA notices to all businesses. There's another government agency. Give me 1 second. I thought I had it up here. CISA, right? So what does that stand for? That stands for Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, right? Has put out a number of different PSAs as well, with just some information in regards to users needing to be on the lookout for phishing, for malware distribution, for malicious emails, registrations of new domain names that contain words in their email addresses that look like something that you may be doing business with or someone you might be interacting with, but instead of .com, it's .gov, or instead of .gov, it's .net, right? So there's all sorts of little things to look for as a user now, where maybe your spam filtering or your email filtering and security systems in the office might have done a great job at whitelisting certain types of attacks, but working from home may be very different than that, right? You don't have any of the same security configurations in place to help secure your network. So I think there's a couple different things in that realm that we're looking at. We're trying to provide content and guidance on. The reality is simply that if you hadn't already been forward thinking and made some of these transitions in months past, you've probably had to make that decision under duress, which may or may not be the best circumstance. Obviously, you all are there to be the unified voice and the professionals in place to provide that sort of guidance. But I think the biggest takeaway is those who have already had a continuity plan in place, and those who have really invested in their infrastructure and the tools that they're using, or at least the companies that they're doing business with. Those are the ones that were able to switch very quickly and continue working far sooner than some of those that really needed to completely overhaul the way that they do and think about approaching their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we had an instance, at this point, probably 5-6 months ago, Brian will remember this well. We had a client who had a maintenance crew that had a mishap in their server room, and we get a call at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the entire server room was being flooded. And I bring this up because this shows the this obviously had nothing to do with power outage or anything, but you could see the same instance. So this was a company that still, they had a hybrid on-premise for some of their stuff, cloud for some of their stuff, and all of a sudden everything in their server room is crashing, their server, their switching, their power devices, everything. And so we get that call about 3 o'clock, Brian, right? And
Yep.
So now we got, we deploy people out there, and, thankfully they were using Datto backup. And I think it was by, what would you say, Brian, about 9 o'clock that evening?
At the latest, probably, yeah.
Yeah, 100% back up and running. Now, their server room, I mean, we would take switches and water would just pour out of them. So now everything in the server room was down. So, that brings up the question, well, how were they back up and running then? Well, that's where Datto comes into play. We were able to fail everything over to the Datto cloud. It was the first time that I had personally gone through that process. And I was amazed. I was sitting there working on it. I'm like, well, wait a minute. We don't even have a true, it's talking on the same subnet, but it's not here. How is this even working? And I was just amazed. And we had cables running across the floor and everything to get these temporary switches up and running, but the company was able to come in the next day, and they were able to work, and effectively, like, they didn't even know that anything had happened. Obviously they knew, but then we had to get new equipment in and everything, and then we filled everything back. And that whole process, to me, I was blown away with how simple it was and how reliable it was and how everything just worked exactly as it was supposed to, which is our goal, right? When we talk to clients, it's we want to make sure they have the right expectations and that we're delivering on those expectations. So for them, their expectation was that they were going to be able to get up and running, even though everything in their server room had crashed and wasn't going to get back up and running that day. And we were able to fulfill that expectation because the backup worked the way that it was supposed to. So I was really impressed with that. I've heard similar around even, SharePoint getting, hit with ransomware or something like that. And then, that's where you talk about that. A lot of people think, well, it's Microsoft. Why do I need a backup? Well, because and regardless of where it's at, it can get affected. So having that secondary or that third party backup in place, able to just restore right over, right back over, everything keeps going like normal.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I mean, Microsoft really exists within a shared accountability model, right? There are most infrastructure related responsibilities are cared for by Microsoft. They do a phenomenal job, and some of the additional assets like managing customer configurations and the subscription types. There's 1,000 different types of O365 licenses.
I know.
Depending on what kind of organization you are. And they all have different settings for how long your retention works, how long you're keeping your trashed items. If your trash items are deleted, they're irrecoverable. There's all sorts of issues, both for local malicious activity, due to users that might be on their way out the door. There's all sorts of external, security threats involved. And, the reality is that Microsoft simply does not have the tools in place to allow you to recover in a way that would be, number one, simple, number two, cost effective. And in some cases, simply wouldn't go back far enough in order for you to provide the data needed for example, a legal case, or if you needed to pull something from, 91 days ago instead of, 90 days. There's a lot of different, very specific things, and every environment is different. I think both on the continuity side and the cloud to cloud side, we try to take a look at all of those things. But I think you mentioned it most. I mean, I'm imagining that the vast majority of your your inbound ticket flow for this last month has been work from home, transitioning work systems, and either transitioning folks from on-prem to cloud-hosted platforms. Right. So with Office 365 specifically, they have had a number of major outages related to the sheer volume of ingest. Right, creating new accounts. At one point internationally, I think it was in Italy early on during the events in that region, where they had several outages because there were tens of thousands of new accounts being created for Teams specifically in a matter of hours that just they weren't able to handle. Here in the United States, there's a number of different incidences. If you were to Google some of the news, you'd see some pretty big outages. So again, the reality is that the platform allows for so much more flexibility than you'd have with a locally hosted product, and there's tons of benefits there. But as far as your plan to protect your business and ensure its viability, ensure that you're doing everything you can to sustain this event both in the short term as well as the long term, you really need a secure secondary copy, and that ensures against all sorts of different issues that otherwise Microsoft alone would not allow you to directly mitigate. And so if you're relating that back to the downtime discussion, that's really what we're talking about. Downtime is not only the inaccessibility of your business data, but in many cases, there are additional costs that are associated with not being able to access your data. If you were to lose data, for example, there's in some cases a price tag that is insurmountable with trying to recreate lost data. There's damage that's made to your brand for not being able to access certain records for your customers, and then not to mention from a compliance standpoint, if you were legally responsible for maintaining a historical backup for X number of months or years. There's a ton of different legalities around not being able to restore specific content if there were some sort of audit or a court case. So we see that more frequently for some of the more highly regulated fields like healthcare, legal department, financial industries. Those are the big three that would typically require in excess of several years of retention. And so, our tools make it very simple and automated to do that, both on the continuity side and the cloud to cloud side. But those are things that oftentimes your users probably aren't thinking of at the outset. But in the planning and sort of pre-sales phase of all of these products, hopefully, again, you sort of took some steps to try to mitigate this before it happened. But, those are some of the things that we are thoughtful of because with the decade plus of experience that we have in this industry, these are the critical issues that mean the difference between a business staying afloat, growing, remaining profitable, and experiencing some significant events that those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time to come on with us today, George. We wanted to include you. We've been meaning to reach out to some of our vendor partners, any ways to get them on here, and we thought it would be a good time to have you on here, and we appreciate you taking the time. I know, sometimes it seems like we got all the time in the world, and sometimes it seems like we're more busy than ever right now. It's been a crazy several weeks. I think you guys are on week 7, you said, as well, just like we are, of working from home, and you were saying probably going to be continuing on for a bit here as well.
Yeah, it's challenging because as much as you might hear in the media, nobody really knows, right? There's a lot of very, very smart people working on some very complex issues, both in local government, in advanced pharmaceuticals. You have a lot of determining factors that are playing into the return time for work for many different businesses. And it's all regional, right? I mean, so you all in the Midwest might return sooner than we would in the Northeast. The reality for us is that we're so close to New York City, and the tri-state area is so highly populated. And commuters cross borders every single day. It's not as though a virus would stop at the state lines. So the reality is just the exposure over here is far greater and in much more densely populated areas. And so we are hopeful that we can return at some point in the coming months. But we have the tools in place, the guidance, and we have the systems that we need to work remotely as long as we need to. Right now, our biggest priority is just being able to provide educational content, resources for our partners to help their end users understand some of the risks that are involved with working from home at this point. We have a couple different programs in place to assist financially as well, because the well-being of our business partners is paramount at this point in time. But really that's our main focus, is our partners and then our own people. So we're trying our best to make sure that we all have a comfortable workspace. We're all supported in the best way possible. We're connected. We use Slack and a couple other products to make sure that we're connecting daily. My team individually has stand-up meetings usually every other day, maybe every third day. We've done virtual happy hours. We've done virtual, lunch. We just did a free lunch Friday on this past Friday with I think 1,500 people.
Wow,
which was insane. We had Austin McCord, our former CEO, on. He was fortunate enough to buy lunch for everybody, which was interesting. Wow. But we all got an electronic Grubhub gift card to buy lunch for Friday, so that was interesting.
That's cool.
But we're trying to maintain our culture, and we're trying to maintain our sanity. So I think having a healthy balance between all things is really the key right now. So still feeling positive, looking forward to hopefully things improving sooner than later. But until we see some significant change, this is our current normal. Heard that a lot. I feel like it's annoying. I'm sorry I said it, but that's just the reality. So we're pushing on forward. We have a plan, and I think to the extent that our partners are still on the front lines, really dealing with and making sure that your customers are protected and they have everything that they need. As a vendor on the back end, we're really looking to do the same with our business partners.
Yeah, and we appreciate it. We've been trying to do the same type of stuff. We've come out with a couple of things to help companies be able to get spun up working remotely very quickly. We've come up with some offers that even where we're giving away the labor to do so, just to try to help out local businesses. So, that's what it's all about right now, is just trying to help each other get through this, and the more businesses that can kind of navigate their way through this, the better we all are. So. I think that's a good way to look at it. I appreciate the Datto's support as well. Datto's been a great partner of ours for I don't even know how long now, but years and years and years.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I know, Brian. You've gone to all the conferences and everything. I know you love everything that they've put on as well.
Yeah, I think I want to thank you, George, and Datto. Day to day, we can't predict what's gonna happen next, but I will say that when it comes to at least the backup solutions, it's been nice to not have to worry about that. As you could imagine, that's a nightmare of mine, that backups are not in place or working right for clients. And with Datto, it's just something that we never really worry about. Your guys' support has still been great all through this whole process, and we've been able to leverage a lot of your solutions in the past that we hadn't really come across a good use case for, so again, appreciate everything you guys do for us.
Interact with Tech Talk Detroit at techtalkdetroit.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.